What is up everyone, how are you guys doing? My name is Peedy, and in today's video I will take a look at the Fiddlesticks rework that has just been introduced in the last patch of League of Legends 10.7. I will highlight all the changes, I will go through all his abilities, and I will talk about all the combos you should use. And at the end of the video I will give you guys some suggestions for the rune pages and for his itemization, for both the jungle role as also for support. If you guys are new here and you want to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe and help my channel grow so I can keep making awesome videos for you guys. With that out of the way, let's get right into this guide. Let's begin by taking a look at Fiddle's abilities. First up is his passive, a harmless scarecrow. While his old passive used to give him a short burst of movement speed upon standing still, his new passive means that he can no longer use a trinket, so Fiddle can't buy a warding totem, a sweeping lance, or a faster alteration orb. Instead, Fiddle stores up something called scarecrow effigies. He can have up to 2 stored at any given time, and he can have a maximum of 3 effigies on the map. If Fiddle levels up, the duration of these effigies on the map increases and the recharge time decreases. Once placed down, the effigies will grant vision, just like a ward, until the timer runs out, or until they have been spotted by an enemy. At level 6, they will also be able to reveal nearby enemy wards, similar to a pink ward. Once placed down, the effigies will take the appearance of Fiddlesticks and they will look just like him. If an enemy spots them, the effigy will do a random action before disappearing. So we can show this here. If we place down an effigy, this one flashed away. The next one might use an ability. This one used the Q. Sometimes they just fall over. See, that one flashed again. Sometimes they just fall over. Sometimes they will run away. So they will always do a random action. So once the enemy walks into vision of an effigy, at first glance, the enemy might not know if this is Fiddlesticks or an actual effigy. So this can be used for some really nice mind tricks. And it can also trick enemies really nicely, because they might be using an ability on an effigy. They walk into a brush, they see a Fiddlesticks, they might just use the ability. Maybe they flash away if Fiddlesticks is fat. So this can be used very nicely. Another thing that's very cool is the fact that when Fiddlesticks stands still for a certain amount of time, he will turn into a scarecrow and his health bar will disappear. So if you stand next to your effigies, they might not know who the real Fiddlesticks is. So the more play this sees and the more people get used to it, I think we can see some really nice things happening with that. So if you become a good Fiddlesticks, you can really play some mind tricks with your enemies. Next up is Fiddle's Q, Terrify. While his old Q used to be a single target point-and-click fear that did no damage, his new Q now has a passive and an active part. The passive part says that any spell cast while unseen and out of combat will terrify the enemy. This means that you can now use your W, your E, and your ultimate to fear enemies, and not just your Q like before, as long as you were unseen and out of combat. This works as AoE as well, and it will affect all enemies hit by the spell. The active portion of his Q will deal damage based on the target's current health. Since it's current health damage, you want to use this ability early on in any combo, and it will do more damage when they have more remaining health. More on that in the combo section later. So if the target hasn't been recently feared, it will apply the fear. If the target has been recently feared, it will just do double damage. So we can showcase this here. This target has not been feared yet. So we press Q, it applies the Terrify, and it does a certain amount of damage. As you can tell, this indicator is running around the target dummy, showing how much time is left until we can fear it again. We can just wait till that happens. Now we can Q it again, and it will be feared, as you can see by the indicator. What will happen now, however, if it has already been recently feared, we can do it again. Now it does double damage. As you can see, it does around 600 damage now instead. The indicator is done, and it fears again. So this is how the new Fiddle Q works. Next up is Fiddle's W, Bountiful Harvest. While his old W used to be a single target drain that leached life of his enemies, his new W instead is AoE and drains health from all nearby enemies. The final tick of damage deals % missing health damage, so you want to use this when the target is as low as possible to do the most damage. It acts somewhat like an execute. If you complete the channel or kill the target, 60% of the cooldown is refunded. So we can see here, we use our W, only one target is in range, and we will drain one. If we stand in the middle of the enemies, we drain them all. So this can be extremely powerful if you stand in a group of targets to not die. Also, this makes him a lot better at AoE clearing camps, because all the AoE camps are way easier to clear and you stay way more healthy. Next up is Fiddle's E, Reap. What his old E used to be where Fiddle threw a crow that chained and bounced upon a couple of enemies and silenced them, his new E is now a skill shot that deals damage and slows enemies. The center part of the crescent-shaped area will silence enemies as well. As we can see, if I pick up the rectangle, everything hit by the little rectangle shape will be slowed and take damage. And everything in the center area, like for example this team or target dummy now, will be silenced, as you can see by the 3 little dots above them. So this is maybe one of the parts of his kit where, in my opinion, Fiddle is not as good anymore, because his AoE silence used to be so good. If you would ult in, you would E, it would bounce up multiple enemies and it would silence them. Now, the skill shot is a lot harder to hit. It's a little bit iffy. The range is okay, but the silence is only in the middle, which can be dodged pretty easily. So you want to use this together as much as you can with your Q or when the enemies are feared. But more on that obviously in the combo section later on. Next up is Fiddle's ultimate, Crowstorm. This ability is still Fiddle's bread and butter and hasn't really changed much. Fiddle channels for 1.5 seconds and blinks to the target area, dealing AoE damage around him. The big change is that because of this new passive on his Q, his ultimate now fears all targets as well, if Fiddle was out of combat and unseen when he casts it. Vision control is still really important, so he can sneak up without being spotted and get a big ultimate off. Fiddle's ultimate can single-handedly win a teamfight, so knowing all the positions from which you can ult, including spots over walls, very important. If we go into the brush, we can see the range, pretty much the same. We ult into all the enemies, and you will see they will now all get feared. So it's very important to know all the spots on which you can ult, because his ultimate is absolutely really, really strong. Let's move on and talk a little bit about Fiddle's combos. The biggest combo Fiddle has is, while being unseen and out of combat, to ult in, use Q on a target, hit as many people as possible with E, and then get an AoE drain off. So it will be R, Q, E, W. Let's see how this looks in real time. If you don't have your ultimate because it's on cooldown, or you're not level 6 yet, another combo Fiddle can do while being unseen and out of combat is to open up with his E, which will fear the target because of the new passive on his Q. Then you use Q, which will do double damage, because the target has just been feared, and then you finish it off with W. Let's see how this combo looks in real time. As you can see, this is a pretty massive combo on a single target, even if you don't have your ultimate. Another combo to know if you're not standing in the brush and you're out in the open, for example while being invaded by the enemy jungler, is to fear the target with Q, weave in an auto attack, then E to silence the enemy, and then you finish it off with a W. Let's take a look how this looks. So you fear, you auto, you wait. So if you chain these together, you will fear the target. While he's being feared and you can't do anything, you auto attack him. When he comes out of the fear, you E right away, so you silence the target, and then you can W. Let's take a look at some of the rune pages and item choices Fiddle can make. Obviously this comes down a lot to personal preference, the elo you're in, your own team comp, enemy team comp, the state of the meta, and many other factors. There are lots of choices, and what I did is pick 2 general rune pages for each role, jungle and support, and to give you an example, full build. Make sure to adapt and change based on the situation, and not just copy this. Let's start with jungle. Electrocute is a safe keystone that is consistent, but junglers have been using Dark Harvest or even Predator. After that, you go Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter. Then you can go either for Inspiration as a secondary with Cosmic Insight and Perfect Timing, or you pick Sorcery with Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. Then you take 2 Adaptive Force and you take Armor. A full build could look something like this. Runic Echoes, Sorg Shoes, Hourglass, Morello, Deathcap, and a Void Staff. Obviously, depending on the enemy team comp and the situation, if you get an early lead or not, you can change this up. But this is a very standard and good build that can work in most situations. Let's take a look at some of the rune choices for support. There are basically 2 main choices. You go Aftershock or you go Arcane Comet. If you go Aftershock, you take Font of Life, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. You go Inspiration secondary with Perfect Timing and with Cosmic Insight, double Adaptive Force, and Armor. If you go for Arcane Comet, you go Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Scorch, And then you also go the same inspiration second, perfect timing, and 2 adaptive force and armor, and obviously cosmic insight. A full item build could look something like this. You go for a fully upgraded support item, Sorc Shoes, Hourglass, Liandry's, Rylai's, and a Death Cap. This brings me to the end of this guide. If you liked this video and it was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. It helps me grow this channel and to make sure that I can keep making awesome content for you guys. And comment down below if you want and let me know what you think about the Fiddle rework and what you thought about this guide. Make sure to check out any of my links in the description for my Discord, my social media, and my Twitch channel. Till next time, I love you all. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.